Hey guys, Greg and Ryan here, back for another American Horror Story breakdown of Freak Show.
This is episode 3, Edward Mordrake part 1. Now, spoiler warning, if you haven't seen this episode yet, get out of here, go watch it, then come on back. Now let's do this.
Now, as Greg mentioned, this is part 1 of Edward Mordrake. It's a two-parter about the kind of story that revolves around the urban legend that is Edward Mordrake.
It's not real. We'll get into that a little bit more later on, though. So the episode opens up at the museum, the American Morbidity Museum. We see Stanley and Maggie for the first time.
Yeah, and as soon as you see this, you kind of get the feeling that it doesn't bode well for any of the freaks. You know that like eventually like the storylines are gonna cross, and this means bad news for someone that we have come to kind of love and kind of root for. You instantly cannot trust Stanley and Maggie, played two American Horror Story veterans, Dennis O'Hare and Emma Roberts. So it starts like with an uneasy feeling off the top of this episode.
Yes, it is. Now, there's a bunch of little Easter eggs in that room. You can see the portrait in the background of Grady Stiles Jr., who, of course, Jimmy Darling is based off of.
Yeah. You also see the liver of Siamese twins, Chang and Eng, going for like, I think they mentioned like $5,000 for the liver.
Yes.
Which basically was one of the first like Siamese American conjoined twins that got popularity a while back.
So they're real.
Yeah, and you know, it's small little oddities here and there that basically don't bode well for what we're gonna see happen to some of the characters later on.
These poor people, doomed to lie here and be gawked at all day.
Well, they were losers in life. At least now they have some value.
From there, we go to West Palm Beach, which is about, half an hour away from Jupiter, Florida, where we find out there's a curfew in Jupiter. So a bunch of kids are coming over there to
do their
celebrate.
trick-or-treating.
Yep. Now, with that said, trick-or-treating and Halloween, of course, this is the perfect time to put an homage in there from the Carpenter film, which is fine with me.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. You get to see Twisty kind of stalking
great.
children as they're trick-or-treating. An obvious homage, like you said, to Halloween, the original film.
You gotta do it. You gotta.
You gotta do it. It's really fun right there. But it also kind of shows kind of Twisty his reign of terror. You know, he's kind of going outside of normal Jupiter and kind of
so creepy.
Picking off like, you know, people to basically his victims, and then also some kids he wants to kidnap as well and put on his own kind of show for.
No one sees this clown. No one at all.
And the funny thing is, it's also kind of a little bit early in the day to be fully dressed and like
4 p.m.
for like a older adult. You know, I'd be kind of freaked out.
By
you know,
himself,
I get
walking
like,
down there. Bringing
the toddlers out a little bit early to get some trick or treating done. But when you see a full grown man in a very realistic looking killer clown outfit, I just run the other way.
Next up, we check in on Ethel, and it's not looking good for her at the moment. She's got 6 months to a year to live. She has cirrhosis.
Very unfortunate news, obviously, but also on top of this, Jimmy is in a very fragile state, right? He blames himself for Meep's death.
Yep.
So, you know, he doesn't yet know about his mother's illness, but...
And he doesn't know about his dad either.
Exactly, and you can tell it's a very volatile situation for Jimmy once all this kind of, all this happens and comes to a head.
We're at a tipping scale right now.
Yeah.
I can't protect any of them.
You can't blame yourself.
Why not? They needed a leader and I failed them.
Now we do get a fun little story time amongst the Freak Show, right? Ethel gets to tell her amazing story that it's been passed down for years and years about Edward Mordrake, the urban legend.
Yes, urban legend, not real.
A lot of these people in the Freak Show circuit really believe is true. And that's part of the reason why they can't perform on Halloween night. Now, Mordrake is, of course, played by the great Wes Bentley, his first appearance on the show. He will return for Hotel the following year. And Mordrake was mistakenly believed to be a real-life person, but it turns out is just an urban legend. He was discovered to have been the fictional creation of Charles Lowton Hildreth, who fabricated his story for a sensationalist article in the Boston Sunday Post in 1895. Now, it's said that Mordrake suffered from diprosopis, which is a congenital defect also known as craniofacial duplication, which basically means, in layman's terms, that he has two faces. A face on the front, normal, and then a face on the back. Now, this specifically drove him insane in this story, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he kind of went mad because
when he's going to sleep, it whispers to him.
Yeah.
All right, and he tries to kill it.
I could see how that would
yeah.
Be unnerving.
Many times in many ways, but it wouldn't die.
So Mordrake broke out of the asylum. He
Yeah.
joined a freak show.
Yep.
From there, he killed all the freaks and then killed himself. And this is why no one performs on Halloween night, because you're worried of the curse of Edward Mordrake that he may come back.
He'll basically come back, and then he'll recruit you.
Yes.
Onto like basically his troupe of dead freaks, and you don't want to become one of them. So basically, everyone's under the understanding that you do not perform on Halloween night. Some of the newcomers, however, like they don't take it so serious.
Bet and Dot.
We don't perform on Halloween night out of respect.
Out of fear, darling. If any freak performs on Halloween, they summon the spirit of Edward Mordrake and his demon half-face.
Now, over in the Mott family mansion, still it's completely insane, right? Dora is dressed up as Woody Woodpecker because it's Dandy's favorite cartoon character.
Only on this show can you have Patti LaBelle doing the voice of Woody the Woodpecker for a second.
Also, Dandy hates his own costume.
Yes.
He doesn't like Howdy Doody. He doesn't like his costume that his mom helped him with.
So the freaks are saying their goodbyes to Meep. I thought those were rocks, but you just told me right now, apparently what they were throwing on the coffin was something else.
Yeah, normally you think like, pour one out for someone that's passed away, but they're throwing chicken heads onto the coffin.
Right on.
Because we learned that Meep used to play kind of practical jokes with chicken heads. He used to put those in trick-or-treaters' bags when they were trick-or-treating kids' bags, which would just...
What you do. That's what you do. It's normal.
Yeah, completely scare the hell out of every child in the world. But it was a funny little touch to basically be throwing chicken heads on as they bury him.
Damn. And from there, a taxi pulls up, and surprise, it's Maggie Esmeralda as a fortune teller.
We know we can't trust this one. Now, of course, Evan Peters and Emma Roberts were actually dating at the time in real life, so it was kind of a on-screen romance and an off-screen romance during this time. So you kind of know that she's gonna be kind of a love interest of Jimmy, but also, hey, we can't really trust this woman because she's not exactly who she says she is.
No. The next scene, we end up in an operation room with the Tatler twins. Bet, she's having a nightmare.
Yes.
But Dot is having the perfect dream at this point.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy how they were able to kind of show perspectives, right?
Yeah.
Of the twins. We know that they have their own thoughts, but then when we see the dreams, we get to see just how different they truly are.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Edward Mordrake story we got, where whispering in the back of his head and these other ideas going on, and now we have the same thing, this real life situation with Bet and Dot happening. One's having a nightmare, one's having a perfect dream, and one wants to continue down that road to make this a reality.
Yeah, it was pretty surprising how Dot was just so focused on becoming separated from her sister, even if it would kill her sister, right?
Yep.
She wants nothing more than to just be her own person.
Cold-blooded.
Yeah, and even if that meant like her own sister dying, whereas Bet like would never want to leave her, right? She wants to be together. So these two just diverge so much in their personalities and kind of like what their definition of happiness is.
I was having the most beautiful dream. Why did you wake me? Because I was trapped inside that dream, and for me it was a nightmare.
So then Jimmy sends Maggie to go see Elsa, and from there she quickly reads the room. It felt like 2 seconds in the edit, but could have been like 10 minutes. She just looked around the entire room, and then she pulls out a crystal ball and starts to read on it for a second before Elsa gets closer to it, because she says she sees someone.
Yeah.
What was it? Marlena, her enemy, apparently, at the time. And that's all it took for Elsa to be hooked in.
Yeah, she kind of like, she used Elsa's own insecurities to basically prove her that she was an actual real life fortune teller, right? And she feeds into all that. And also the aspect of her wanting to kind of still be a star and hold on to that.
Yep.
She kind of gave her a little bit of hope towards the end of that reading. But we know it's complete BS. But Elsa is completely sold, and it kind of gives her, it proves to her that, like, hey, Maggie needs to be a part of this freak show.
Yes.
Under his guidance, he'll make you a star.
Esmeralda. You're hired.
Back with Desiree and Dell. Dell's having a bit of a performance issue, if you know what I mean, which is causing some big problems in their relationship at the moment.
We already knew that Dell had some serious anger management problems, some temper problems that even drove him to kill. And now we find out that there's even more problems in the romantic department between him and his wife. And it just proves that it's not the couple that we thought that they were off the top when we were first introduced to them.
Yeah, and this scene, it's just to set up the very next scene with Ethel as Dell would walk outside to talk to Ethel about her problems.
Yeah.
The whole scene with his problems in the bed, or whatever you want to call it, with Desiree. It's just to set us into this very next scene with Ethel as she breaks down to him what's her problems with Jimmy and the fact that she's dying.
And this was a pretty touching scene, right? Ethel's basically begging and asking for Dell to kind of just man up and be a father figure to Jimmy, who's had no one to kind of look up to as a father figure.
Who you just punched into oblivion in the last episode, but cool.
I'm dying. That with any luck, it'll be sooner than later. He's gonna need some guidance, and preferably from a man. Come on, can't you be decent? Keep an eye on him, for Christ's sake.
Now it's Halloween night, and we get, of course, another nod to the classic Carpenter film. As Dandy puts that mask on, we get the POV shots.
Love it, love it.
And his outfit pretty much resembles the exact outfit of Michael Myers in the first film.
There's this weird like back and forth between him and Dora that starts in this episode. He's like, he wants to kill her. He like wants to make
He's got the knife.
He wants to make a move into being this serial killer. Like he wants to do something really horrible, but he can't quite get there. He's like almost still fighting with himself about what he is and who he is and kind of what's he gonna become.
The second he turned his back on Dora, I would have knocked his ass out. But all right, all good. It's a TV show.
Yeah. Now, if you thought Maggie was bad, well, Stanley is absolutely horrible.
Yes, he's the ringleader here.
Yeah.
Let's keep that clear from this point going forward. Maggie, she's unsure of this situation. She doesn't want to kill anybody.
Right. She's kind of been in survival mode her entire life, right?
Yes.
Just kind of as a young, single woman, just trying to make it on her own, and pickpocketing, conning people out of stuff, but like just for survival.
Yeah.
Stanley is like a really greedy person who literally wants to kill in order to just make some money.
Yep. She tells him about the Tatler twins,
Yeah.
and this piques his interest even more. And he's like, "You got to get them for me."
Also, Stanley might be related to Trevor from 1984.
Holy Christ.
You're a legend.
Thanks.
Now, back in West Palm, we're gonna get a scene in a house, a random house in the suburbs here in West Palm, Florida. And it was pretty hysterical, just kind of setting the tone of when this is taking place.
Moms are complaining about Dragnet.
Which was obviously a show in the 1950s. People kind of, overreacting to like the crumbling of the American society of pop culture, kind of ruining their children, all that kind of stuff, right? They need to be more concerned about Twisty the Clown than the TV.
Yes.
And he pops up as the older brother in the house is kind of giving his sister...
He's blackmailing her for candy.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden Twisty shows up and bye-bye.
What happened? Where's your brother?
The clown took him.
I'm sorry, if I hear screaming and I walk into the kid's room and they tell me, like, "Hey, where's your brother?" "Oh, the clown took him." He's gone. God bless him. He's gone. That's just it. It's over. I'm sorry. We're going to have to get a new kid.
Now remember, Elsa has a big problem with the Tatler twins.
Yes.
And even last episode at the end, she wanted to kind of turn them against each other, right? She does not want them to do well, to find success, to be the headliner of the freak show. She wants that spotlight.
Yes, and she's holding on to it as long as she can. So they get in another argument about the exact same thing they got into an argument last week.
Yeah. Side note, if you look really closely, you can see the sheet music from Criminal by Fiona Apple right before Elsa knocks it away. Of course, that was the song that they performed last week, right? With the Tatler twins performed, and they kind of blew everyone away, and they got all this applause and success, and then she was basically like, how do I turn them against each other?
And speaking of contemporary music, right on time, Elsa performs Gods and Monsters by Lana Del Rey. Here we go again.
Headed towards a messed up holiday.
It's subjective. It's all good. It's a TV show, and I understand also for marketing-wise, it's easier for your trailers and anything in the future if you're trying to promote this to a younger audience.
Yeah.
The music has to be very contemporary sometimes.
Much as you and I have a kind of problem with it, like it's still a great way to showcase your skill set, right?
Like
they all are very good singers and dancers and whatever they're doing. So it's fun to kind of change up the mood a little bit and put a little musical number in some of these episodes.
Yeah, it's extremely dark here, so they're trying to lighten the mood just a little bit. Now, unfortunately, this performance summons Edward Mordrake. It's Halloween. Now, with that said, all the freaks are looking around like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
And by the time they're finished with the song, Elsa takes a bow, gets up, and he's gone.
Yeah, I took it as almost like another repudiation of how Elsa's performance and how good she is. He's not really a fan. No one's really a fan of Elsa. It's like another ding against her, right?
Yeah.
Edward Mordrake is more concerned and more interested in learning about the story of Ethel. So he goes over to Ethel and kind of learns her whole backstory and kind of the pain that she's kind of suffered and been with. And he could care less about what Elsa is, but as we learn later, like he might come back and...
Spoiler, he's gonna talk to other people at the freak show as well.
Totally.
But
So he talks to Ethel, and then we learn a little bit more of kind of her backstory of what, as a performer that she was the bearded woman back in the day, and then when she got pregnant with Jimmy. Some horrible things, like even that Dell would would basically sell tickets for the live birth of Jimmy.
Yes, which is her greatest shame, they called it, or was it,
Yeah, horrible. They're trying to make money and get exposure based off of just a live birth of a child with some deformities.
Ugh.
Step right up, folks. It's the marvel of the century. A live freak birth. Something like you've never seen before. Right before your very eyes, a live freak birth. Right this way, sir.
It ends with Mordrake thanking her for telling her story, and at this point, Ethel thinks, this is it, I'm going.
Yeah.
She closes her eyes, but then we hear the voice from the back of Mordrake's head saying, not the one.
Yeah, so basically, since we know this is a two-parter, like you said earlier, he's gonna talk to some more of the freaks and kind of get an idea of who is basically worthy to join his cast of characters in the afterlife, right?
Okay.
And of course, the episode ends with Dandy and Twisty, the dynamic duo of clown killers. They're back at the headquarters in the woods, the bus.
Yeah, we can call it headquarters, Twisty's headquarters.
We see that, but they're basically just kidnapping children and kind of
torturing them.
I don't know what the point is, really. It's just to torture the hell out of them and perform for them, I guess.
Twisty brings a new kid, the kid that he just took from the Dragnet house early on.
Yeah, so it's not looking good for anyone that are trying to stop these two clowns. Like, they're getting away with this. They're kind of, as we know after this episode, Twisty's kind of spreading his map of horror across different
parts of
Florida. And now that he has kind of recruited Dandy, I don't know if he put the formal request in to join the group, but he has nothing to say.
He's going with it.
He's going with it. So it's been an interesting kind of. Hopefully, someone can stop these two and kind of stop the reign of terror across the entire Florida landscape. Now it's time to talk about our favorite moments of episode 3. What do you got, Greg?
This week, Ma Petite popping out of that pumpkin. It's adorable, but at the same time, I freak out easily. So if that were me, oh man, poor Ma, she would be looking at the moon by then, because I would have kicked whatever was popping out of that pumpkin. It would have been maybe 10 minutes before I realized that was Ma Petite flying off.
That was scary. That was a good one.
It was really good.
I enjoyed that. Probably one of my favorite parts was just like Ethel's whole storytelling of Edward Mordrake. I like how it kind of changed up the pace. It was kind of like an urban legend that she was telling to everyone. I like the music they used during the whole sequence, the black and white footage. I thought it was a fun little story, and a good like superstitious Halloween story to kind of set us in motion. I also really enjoyed all the Halloween homages, obviously, to John Carpenter's classic film.
Of course.
I think it was, we knew it was coming. You had to do it.
Yeah.
But I think it was a fun little add into this season of Freak Show, especially when you have a serial killer on the loose in these, suburban, housing districts, and it was just really spot on. Anytime that American Horror Story actually covers Halloween night, I think that they do a really fun representation of kind of some of the horrors and the scares that go on during those.
A lot of foreshadowing as well for Dandy Mott's character was in this episode, without going into spoilers, but we'll come back to it later on. But there's a lot of foreshadowing for Dandy here.
That's it for this breakdown, guys, but hit us up in the comments and let us know what you thought of the episode.
And we'll be back next week for part 2. See you then. Bye-bye.